Hello everyone, it is currently January 1st, 2023, and today I'd like to share some of my goals that I've set this year for both myself artistically and for my art business. Side note, I am currently a little sick, so there might be a few jump cuts here and there if I have a little coughing fit or something, and I might sound a little weird, but try to ignore that. We'll get through this together. So before I go into my actual goals, I want to talk a little bit about how I organized and actually planned them out. So my head is pretty chaotic, constantly got a lot of stuff running through there. So what I did first is I just opened up a plain notes app and I wrote down everything that was in my head. All of the things that I've been thinking about this year that I'd like to do, everything that I thought about wanting to do in the future, and just wrote it all down. And once it was all down on paper, I sorted them out into categories that would just be easier for my brain to digest. So for me, the categories that made the most sense were social media, art business, and artistic goals, because they're related, but they're not all the same. So I thought it would be nice to separate them into little tables, and I'll actually show what it looks like as I go through each set of goals. But for example, this is how messy it looked when I first started going through everything. The year is long and I also don't want to overdo things. I do have a full-time job on top of all of this. So not all of these goals are meant to be hit right away. And so I would write down the goals and then also what I want to accomplish this quarter. So for me, a quarter is probably like, quarter one's probably like January to March. Something like that. And since my full-time job also kind of works in quarters, it's just easy for me to think about in my head. So first we have my social media goals. So I've just got about 3 goals here. I really don't want to overdo things, but my biggest focus was on consistency. This has always been difficult for me, especially with full-time work. It can be really hard to set aside time for social media. And half the time I make stuff, take the photos, and then I just don't post. So I really wanted to be better about that this year. So my first goal is to post consistently on Instagram. And this might look different from quarter to quarter, just depending on how busy my life is. I want to be able to be a little flexible. So my current goal is to plan out my Instagram posts every 2 weeks. Because it takes a lot of energy from me, I figure if I sit down and plan and set up the drafts ahead of time, it'll be a lot easier for me just to click post on the day that I want to post. And currently my goal is going to be about 2 to 3 reels a week. As we all know, reels are kind of the only thing that get any traction on Instagram. It's really been the only thing that gets any visibility outside of the people who I'm friends with. So reels, unfortunately, definitely have to be a part of this goal. But I feel like 2 to 3 is pretty reasonable, especially because I do both digital and traditional art, and reels can also be really short and simple. So it could just be like, hey, look, here's my final piece, or here's a Procreate time lapse. So I'm not gonna be overly perfectionist with it. I just wanna be more consistent. But I wanted to do a range, so 2 to 3. I don't want to expect that every week is going to be the same, and some weeks it might be 1. Again, this is a goal. It is not necessarily an expectation that I have to meet, because I want consistency, but I also don't want to burn out, you know? And as for posts, I'm saying 1 to 2. It's probably going to be more like 1 every week, especially because the posts aren't always worth the time, because you post and then no one sees it. So I'm probably going to err on going more towards the reels and maybe just 1 post of more finished work. But we'll see what happens. Who knows what's going to happen with the algorithm. So that's why we're planning quarterly. Now, my second goal is to post consistently to YouTube. I wanted to do this last year, but again, a lot of life stuff happened in the past year, and there were just times that it just wasn't going to be possible for me. I was severely burnt out from my full-time work, from art, just from everything, and going through a lot of mental health stuff, and I realized that I needed to pull back. But I'm feeling a lot better this year, So currently my goal is to post around every other Thursday and maybe 3 videos a month, something like that. I don't want to overdo it. I definitely can't do weekly, at least not right now. When you're working a 40+ hours a week, also filming a YouTube video and editing and having time for all the other things I need to do just isn't realistic. But every other week is, so hopefully I'll be seeing you guys a whole lot more. Oh, hi Wally. One thing I did to make sure that I can actually meet these goals is I put them into my calendar. And I not only put in when I was gonna post, but also put in when I was gonna plan out these things. Because a big part of actually making it happen is planning things out ahead of time. So I know that these things take more energy for me. So I'm going to sit down at the beginning of the month, plan out some Instagram posts, plan out what YouTube videos I wanna make. That way when it gets to it, I'm not just like, wow, what am I gonna do? I already have a set idea. And of course I can go off of that plan. I can always stray away, but having that there will just serve as a really good guideline. Now the last goal I have here I think is really important just for my own mental health, and also because I really don't want social media to take over my life, especially like my creativity. I feel like social media has a way of making everything you create kind of revolve around it, and I really don't want that for my artwork. I do art because I love it, not necessarily because I want it to be content. I want it to be art. And I also don't want to burn out, so I have on here to take a social media break once a quarter, at least. It might even end up being more than that. So for me, currently I'm aiming maybe for sometime in March, and that means taking an entire week off social media. I'm gonna delete Instagram, just off my phone, not check it. So take a break both from intake and, or I guess input and output on social media. That way I can rest my brain and maybe even rest creatively. So that means maybe I feel like I could take a break from art that week. Maybe I don't. Maybe I do some sketching. I haven't thought that far ahead. All I know is that it's really important to also schedule and rest. I feel like often Wally's chirping at birds outside. But I think it's important to actually plan that in. It's so important for our creativity and for our health. So for me, I felt that I needed to put that goal in so I don't overwork myself. So last year, I finally started my art business. That was my main goal, was not to do well at it, just to get it going. And now I get to do the taxes this year. It's gonna be so fun. But anyways, I didn't plan too much for this, especially because for Q1, I'm probably gonna take a slight step back and do some more preparations to the foundation of the business rather than creating for it, if that makes sense. So my first goal is to expand my shop offerings, but specifically in ways that are a little more low effort. So if I'm honest, on my online shop last year, I made exactly 4 sales, and they were all from friends and family. But I'm hoping to move on from that. I'm honestly not that disappointed from it. I'm just proud that I actually opened one. But I think that it'll be helpful to offer some digital offerings. So part of these expansions might mean a collection of digital downloads, whether that be prints, maybe a calendar, maybe recipe cards or memo pads, greeting cards, postcards. I haven't really decided yet, but we'll see. And I also wrote that I would like to maybe open my shop again late winter or early spring. I kind of want the beginning of the year to be a creative reset, so I'm not going to focus too much on opening the shop. Now, my second goal for my art business is to make a new website or portfolio. So I've been using Big Cartel mostly because it's the cheapest option. It starts off free for the first 5 items, and then it's like $10-ish a month if you want more and some tracking. I think they might also do some cool stuff with sales taxes, but honestly, that stuff is really hard for me to comprehend and explain. But I have been wanting to make an art portfolio specifically, or an illustration portfolio, for a while. I'd like to maybe get into some freelance work, and that's kind of hard to do if you don't have a portfolio. And I honestly just haven't had the confidence in my work to put one together, but I think it's about time that I believe in myself, and so I'm actually going to sit down and make a portfolio website, and hopefully maybe one that also doubles as a shop. I'll probably end up using something like Squarespace, we'll see. But that is a really big goal for this year, and that's also gonna take a lot of time. Anyways, so my last goal is just to attend some new art markets. So last year was also my first time attending in-person art markets, and I enjoyed them, and it was actually where I made a majority of my sales. But I really only tried 2 different markets. So this year I'd like to try a few new ones. I live in kind of the greater Seattle area, and there's a lot of really great options, and I've also made some connections and friends through going to these art markets, and so my hope is to apply for a couple different ones. I don't plan on doing any in the winter though. It gets so cold, it's miserable, and especially after Christmas, most people aren't really looking to buy things, so it's just not worth my time. So instead, my Q1 goal is just gonna be researching some markets and applying for some in spring and summer. And now for my last set of goals, my artistic goals. So I'm keeping it simple this year. I have a few kind of broad goals, but they're ones that mean a lot to me. So let's get into it. First, I really want to push storytelling in my artwork. I want it to mean something. I don't want it to just be more pretty girls and flowers. Now, there is nothing wrong with that, and I will probably still do a lot of that. But I really want to focus on atmosphere in my pieces. I want to focus on whimsy and creating things that I'm just excited about and not just what's in my comfort zone. And some of the ways I want to push the storytelling is to plan a meaning, a goal or atmosphere before I start a piece. One way I want to go about this is maybe even writing a little bit. So I'm not a writer, but I mean like maybe writing like a dark atmosphere, mysterious, just like little bullet points, something to give myself a little bit of direction while I'm planning things out. And I also want to come up with a finished piece checklist. Sounds a little weird, but maybe just there's a lot of things I tend to overlook that I think would really push my artwork forward. For example, lighting. I don't really think about it. I kind of just paint it in, but I think if I could maybe plan, where is my light source? What kind of light source is it? Is it warm light or cool light? Writing that down and having a checklist that I go through. And you know, I have ADHD. I tend to space a lot of things. And so for me, writing this stuff down might help me to actually remember and actually do it. So that's another way that I might try to build that into my art, by actually planning a little bit of story, a little bit of background. And again, it doesn't have to be deep. I just want it to be something that I think about before I actually start creating. Now, one thing that I really wanted to do for a while that I think I will use to kind of practice my storytelling is by making a short little zine. Now, I already have an idea. I'll probably make a video about it. It's definitely gonna stretch me a little bit. I don't really know all of what goes into zine making, but I am very excited, and I think it'll be a great way for me to push myself. Now, another goal I have is really simple, really easy. Again, I'll probably make a video about this, but it's to try collage. So I've seen a lot of other artists do this, again, where you're kind of maybe painting your own stuff, but cutting it out and kind of putting it somewhere. I love the dimension, the texture. It just looks fun. And you know, it doesn't have to turn into something that I sell or anything, but I just love how collage looks. And I think it's about time that I actually sit down and try it. Now, my last goal. It's a little connected to my first one, and that is to not avoid creating something because I don't know how. I feel like part of the reason why my artwork is a little more shallow is because I am afraid to try subject matter that I've not drawn before, techniques that I have not tried before. I just look at some stuff and I'm like, that's out of my scope. There's no way I can do that. And I don't even think to try, or even learn how to do it. And so my goal is to think about what do I want to create and not consider what can I do and what can I not do, just what do I want to create? What seems meaningful to me? What seems cool? And then break it down. So that can attach a little to my storytelling goal, but maybe that means I'm like, I want to draw someone in a fantasy city. Now that sounds very difficult and complicated to me. That means bringing in perspective that I'm not familiar with, drawing buildings, drawing people from very far away, all these things that are just wild and challenging, at least to me. And so rather than go, I can't do that, I can say, you know what? I can, but it's gonna take some preparation. So rather than try to do something quick, I can maybe look up some tutorials and techniques. Again, use my finished piece checklist. And maybe that means I don't tackle the piece right away, but I do some studies of pieces that are similar. I look at other artists' work and I try to break it down. And, you know, think about the shapes. So rather than going, I'm just gonna practice the fundamentals, I think I work much better on doing a project that I'm passionate about and then tackling the fundamentals that I need to through the piece. So I don't have a certain way that I'm gonna go about this, but mostly just when I'm thinking of artwork I wanna create, not limiting myself to my abilities, but looking to expand my abilities through the projects that I do. Now, before I go, I wanna talk a little bit about goals in general and kind of some of the culture around them. And I want to mention that these are goals, not standards that I'm setting for myself. My physical and mental health are always gonna take priority. And if that means that one week I don't post on social media because I need the rest, I'm gonna listen to my body. I really love art and I really want to continue to enjoy it. And I feel like sometimes our capitalist culture can sometimes turn our hobbies and passions into things that can kind of burn us out. And I really don't want that for myself. I want to continue to enjoy my craft. You know, right now it's not my full-time job, so why should I put the stress of full-time work on myself for something that I'm doing on the side that I love to do? And because I have a full-time job, I also have to consider that there might be times that that has to take priority. I really enjoy the full-time work that I do, and it means a lot to me, and sometimes that means that I might have to put art on the side, and that's just kind of the way it is sometimes. And I think it's important to be flexible. You know, I try to set less goals, maybe a little more broad, but that I can add on to throughout the year to stay realistic. And I also want to go in quarterly and adjust my goals, because maybe things in my life change and I want to adjust things. Maybe all of a sudden I have all this art and I want to post to social media 5 times a week. I highly doubt that. That's probably not going to happen. But maybe I need to go, okay, 1 reel a week, 1 post a week. Again, I just want to be flexible and kind to myself. Because at the end of the day, I'm doing these things because I enjoy it, not because I'm trying to hustle more, you know? I want to be gentle with myself. These goals are to help bring some joy and accomplishment. They're not meant to define me or bring shame if I don't meet them. And I want to encourage you that if you've set goals, and if you're not able to hit all of them, that you don't beat yourself up over it. It's something to drive you forward. It's not something that defines your worth. And with that, I want to wish you a happy new year, and hopefully I'll be seeing you around a lot more. Comment down below if you have any goals. Maybe if we share some goals, let me know. And hopefully I will see you all next time. Bye.